Hey folks, Joe Valley here at Quiet Light Brokerage and another episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by, yes, the Exitpreneurs Playbook. If you have not picked it up, please do. It's going to help you reverse engineer a pathway to your own incredible exit. And if you're a buyer in the audience and you know our buddy Walker Dybel over at Buy Then Build in the Acquisition Lab, Walker's talking to his folks about it from a buying perspective and talking about how you can find instant equity in a business that you're buying if you really digest the details in the Exitpreneurs Playbook. So pick it up. You can find it at exitpreneur.io or amazon.com. Just search for Exitpreneur. Appreciate that. And now on to today's guest. We've got Guillaume Le Tual, and I'm trying to pronounce that properly, Guillaume. He is a web entrepreneur, designer, strategy consultant, focusing on Magento, right? Folks, listen, Shopify is not the only one out there. And we're going to talk today about the differences between Magento and Shopify. And Guillaume talks about there's benefits to both, and Shopify might be right for certain people. And then when you get to a certain size, Magento will likely be the better choice for you. I'm not going to get too much into the details here because I'll just screw it up. So we're going to jump into it with Guillaume. Guillaume, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Joe. So as you said, that's all we do here is the Magento. So we're an Adobe certified partner, MageMontreal. And I think today you'll have a fairly balanced view, even though all we do is Magento. I can give you a very good breakdown for both platform strengths and weaknesses there. And we have also the Shopify head office that's not very far from us, relatively close, a few hours of drive. So I do feel plenty of Shopify presence in the area. And I do a lot of pitches, Shopify versus Magento, when we meet businesses who want to build an e-commerce website or build a new one.
Yeah, excellent. And you say within a drive, where are you physically located? Where in the world are you?
On the south shore of Montreal, so near Montreal Island.
Gotcha.
And they're in Ontario, so it's not that far away to drive there.
Gotcha. Okay. Why don't you give a big picture introduction in terms of what you do at MageMontreal?
Sure. So we do e-commerce websites. We'll design, build, and integrate an e-commerce website to automate the business processes, to make the life easier day to day for the merchant, to be more efficient, and so on. So we work exclusively on Adobe Magento. Now there was a lot of renaming recently, so they dropped the name Magento for the commerce version of Magento, the paid version. So they just called Adobe Commerce now, and Magento is strictly the open source free version, and we work with both. So that's really what we do: try to make the merchant's life easier, to automate the business processes and create unique buying experience.
Awesome. And in our pre-recording discussions, we talked about that certain size businesses may focus on Shopify, certain size businesses may go with Adobe Commerce or Magento open source. How does one decide which to go with if they have not launched their brand or product line yet?
Well, that will depend if you have some other kind of backing, perhaps a venture capital backing you, or if you have another business and this is your additional business that you're launching. But generally speaking, Magento is really for businesses at least with $1 million a year of business volume of top line sales and up, regardless if it's online or offline. Under that, it's not really a fit. So that's a first thing right off the gate here that we can say. If you're a new startup business, it's your own personal savings. If you're putting in this to launch, you're under $1 million, for sure, go with Shopify. Don't even hesitate. And there's often that misperception about Magento because you can find an inexpensive $99 template on websites like Team Forest or Template Monster or whatever other website, that this is like for everybody. It's not. Like Magento was built for the mid-size market. So it was not built in the first place for small businesses. And then it sort of expanded both ways a bit toward small businesses, but right now it's going mostly toward the enterprise space because Adobe purchased Magento 3 years ago, and it's pulling it up market.
Will you define mid-market, small market, and up market in terms of dollars and in revenue that a company's doing?
Yeah, for sure. And that definition varies per country, per fiscal definition and everything. But typically, like Adobe will define SMB, small, medium businesses as $0 to $25 million. And then they have the commercial space all the way to the $1 billion a year. And over $1 billion will be the enterprise space.
Okay.
So when it was built, I would say it's more somewhere in the $5 to $100 million range. It's where the sweet spot really is for Magento. It really shines, or if you call it Adobe Commerce now. And with the acquisition from Adobe, it's really adding additional feature upmarket to be truly an enterprise solution, because most people know Adobe for Photoshop and design and Illustrator, Acrobat Reader, and so on. But there's also a very large presence. Adobe is a huge player worldwide for the enterprise space with a large corporation. So it's pulling Adobe Commerce toward that space.
Gotcha. And when we talk about, a website being developed on the Adobe Commerce platform or Magento, I mean, we're going to go back and forth in terms of naming it because it's just a new name change. Are we talking about SaaS content, brands, brand building websites? We talking about, product oriented websites? Which ones would make sense for Magento?
Right. So both will have a similar offering for Shopify and Magento here. Just Magento will have additional offerings. So if you have a simple use case, just add to cart a physical product and you check out, both platform will be great. Then Magento will have additional use cases. It's a more powerful platform. It's a bigger platform. It's a more expansive platform, and it's more upmarket. So you'll have a better support, let's say, for all the subscription systems and for B2B use case, business to business, while let's say Shopify will stick to a business to consumer. And when you have, let's say, add-on plugins that you can add on Shopify, a business-to-business suite or whatever it is, you'll still be typically very limited. That B2B suite comes, again, as a software as a service, as a SaaS software that you're purchasing with just, let's say, 3 products, and it's $25 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month, and here's the list of features, and that's what you get, and sort of deal with it. So when you have on the Shopify side of things, when it will tend to win as the best platform to pick will be when you have very simple use case, keep it as streamlined as possible, and you're willing to work the Shopify way instead of bringing your own way of working to the platform, because it will be limited. And the more you have an advanced and complex use case, more you want automation, something unique for your user's experience and so on, the more Magento will win. The bigger it is, especially in terms of like multi-warehouse, multi-country, multilingual. As soon as you get in the bigger space like that, Magento, the bigger a project and more complex it is, the more hands down Magento will win.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So you're limited on the Shopify space in terms of the third-party apps that you're plugging in, and they're not customizable, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Talk to me about, there's the concern of moving from Shopify to, Magento and possibly losing SEO traffic and things of that nature, or, somebody that's just selling on a third-party platform like Amazon, and they're doing $1 million to even $5 million in revenue, but next to nothing on the Shopify site. At what point do they say, okay, let's hire MageMontreal to help me with, rankings and building out a website that's really going to, take this to the next level?
Right. It often comes a lot with the back-end operation of the company itself, more on the business side of things. How do you want the day-to-day operation of the company to work? And it sort of goes beyond the scope of just the website as an interface people can add to cart and check out. So when you say, okay, day-to-day, we're going through lots of clicks to, let's say, process this order, to print the pack-ins and pick slips, and my customer service reps needs a lot of time to go and fetch that stuff around. There's a lack of organization. So Magento, being an open source software, even though when they have the paid version, they give you a copy of the source code, you have full access to the source code. So then you can do any kind of customization you want. Of course, there's a cost with this, and it's why it tends to be the larger company who buys it. But then you can do really anything you want. So in my company, here's how I want to operate, and here's how I believe my customers should have their customers' experience when dealing with us. When you're on the Shopify side of things, it will cost you way less. When in the category total cost of ownership, Shopify wins, and not just against Magento, pretty much against everybody. So that's where their strength is, and that's where they try to really shine. But that comes with a trade-off, because to keep that cost lower, there's something more fundamental than a discussion of like Shopify versus Magento. There's the software as a service, the SaaS platform, which Shopify is, and there are others in the market, which has BigCommerce and many others. And then you have an open source approach like Magento and some other, that you have full access to the source code. And this is the fundamental difference between both. And once you explore this, you see that there's no choice. If you want to keep a SaaS offering, software as a service like Shopify, and you want to keep the cost of ownership down, you have to restrict what the user can change. Otherwise, it brings the cost of ownership higher, and then you become a Magento. So it's really rare that both platform would be right for a company. When you take the time to really study in depth both of those offerings, and it can be, let's say, with an imperfect analogy, which one is better? Is it a tractor or racing car? Well, are you planning to farm or to race? It can become almost that clear which of the two is the right pick for what you're trying to achieve, because it is a fundamental difference in what it is trying to achieve as a product.
Gotcha. Is there? Talk to me about the challenges of ranking. I see some of the SEO services on your site here, and what you do. A lot of folks that are trying to rank and grow off of the third-party platforms, they may be like, I've seen folks doing upwards of 10 to 15 million on Amazon with nothing or nearly nothing on their own website. How would you help them if they went right to the Magento side of things? If they're doing 10 or 15 million on Amazon, there's probably a sizable opportunity in terms of product interest for direct to consumer. How would you help them in terms of the site build and focusing on the rankings, or are you even helping with SEO rankings, and what other services would they and should they focus on in order to really grow that brand off of those third-party platforms?
Right. So when you're with Amazon, obviously you benefit of all the traffic from Amazon, and some merchants are very good. They learn the game there. Okay, let's be featured. Let's do this. Let's do that. Some will also go further and will do SEO, search engine optimization, and they'll send traffic outside of Amazon on their Amazon listing. And when people are having a hard time to rank their websites outside of Amazon, it's very often because they've not developed very sophisticated techniques, or they have not invested much time in driving traffic from outside of Amazon to their Amazon store, and they only use the Amazon traffic in itself. Because you can do the same thing for your e-commerce store. You own it. You don't have a base traffic. You start from zero, which is difficult. Let's be frank on that. And then you need to scale it up. So the first step that people will typically go is with the pay-per-click ads to test which keyword really is converting outside of Amazon. And once you have your winning keywords like this, which one's really driving, return on investment, because you can track all that with your Google Analytics and your Google AdWords, then you'll do some SEO, some search engine optimization on those specific keywords. And the partnership that you have with your marketing agency is everything. It's so critical. And we're not a marketing agency. So the SEO that we will do on the site is really technical. So all the best practices for the site to be indexed well by Google, respecting all the H1 tags, the structure of the site, the link having keywords in it, and so on. So it's really on-site SEO that is part of building things properly. This is what we cover. And then everything else would be from a marketing agency. And marketing agencies, you have to, ruthless is not the right word in your choice and expectation of performance, but not far. That still being very nice with them and all that. You need to expect and demand performance, and otherwise just change until you find the right fit with a marketing agency. Because I have not seen any of my successful clients who make several millions of sales per year online not also having a very successful ad campaign with it. It exists. those kind of people, and I've heard about them. I heard of them. Unless you're like some kind of celebrity or whatever, you typically need a very a very high performance ad campaign to go with this. And from one agency to the next, it will change if they're good or not at producing results and driving sales that are profitable with the correct advertising budget and so on. And you must demand that of them and keep changing marketing agency until you find the right one that drives you a proven ROI. And this will allow you to scale up.
Gotcha. And you're going to take that results from the proven ROI, the keywords that are ranking well in pay-per-click, and use those to help rank it on SEO. It gives you a direction to drive as you build the site and help it rank.
And it's the same as a normal business, like don't see the website as like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that thing. It's, you want to have traffic in a normal brick and mortar store. What do? You try to get media attention. You try to get a press release. You see if your journalist is willing to talk about you. You go see influencers. It's the same thing. There's nothing gimmicky. It's real marketing, but you send people to the website instead of a regular store.
Yeah, makes total sense. In regards to, I'm just looking at your website, man, you got a lot of different products here, a lot of different clients and different types of brands. And I should stop looking at it because it's a total distraction as to what's going on. But I would encourage anyone listening, go to MageMontreal and take a look. You're wondering, is this, the right type of company to help you build an amazing Magento site and help you grow your brand? I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. There's such a wide variety of different companies and products and services, and some of them pretty damn impressive, if I do say so myself, that you ought to go take a look at it. In terms of, going from, a Shopify to Magento, how complex and how difficult is it to make that switch? If somebody starts off with Shopify, if they're using it now and they're hitting that, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million mark on Shopify, how difficult is the transition, and what extra do they get? What, right, when they make that jump at that leap?
Well, that's a good question, and I have one going live next month, so it's a good discussion to have here. A conversion from Shopify to Magento, and the site itself is a total replatforming, it's a total rebuild. There's nothing to do about that. Either way, Magento to Shopify, Shopify to Magento, you cannot port over code for front-end display or whatever. It's totally two different technological stack, totally. What you can transfer over is all the data, your customers, your product, your images, order history, that kind of thing can be imported in the new website. So you lose nothing in terms of data, but the site itself is a brand new build from scratch. And then part of any websites going live with any platform like this, when there's an existing site, your developer needs to make a list of all the URL, the links for your site to be sure that nothing is lost. And all those get redirected with what's called the 301 redirections, the proper way with SEO, so you don't lose that traffic, so that people don't have a 404 error, so that your Google search console does not give you 404. Everything gets redirected to the new site at the right place.
Is it possible to switch from Shopify to Magento or any other platform and not lose some rankings?
And there will always be some impact. It's different, but it's possible to have almost no negative impact. So the first thing is the on-site experience itself. Let's say if you count your keywords and your meta and your alt tag and your images and what's the copy on it and how many H1, H2, and so on that you have on the site, if the old site and the new one have the same, you can expect a similar on-page scoring from Google, more or less. There are more advanced notions as well, like the code behind it, ratio of code to to text and so on that is displayed to users. So things will change just by changing platform, but if you respect this content to be of as good quality, technically how it's structured, there should not be much difference there. Then you have your link, the URL themselves, make sure you have no 404, redirect all that. And it is possible to prepare for a migration with almost no negative impact. You can have a little bit on traffic sometime after, but it will pick back up if you did it right.
Okay, good. Well, what are the biggest mistakes people make when they're moving from one platform to another, or even just trying to rank SEO wise? What do they not do that they should absolutely be doing?
Well, very often, unfortunately, it's just the fundamentals are not covered right by most companies until they reach a certain level of both in size and intrinsic motivation, or somebody assigned really in charge in that company. You're in charge of marketing and make sure all our copywriting is complete, make sure all our products have all the information. We're still in that stage. Yes, there are people who are very advanced right now in all this. They're like working with AI or whatever, but the majority of merchants are still at the early stage that their product data sheets tend to be incomplete and whatnot. That, make sure you have a lot of high quality pictures, that the description is complete, that all the specifications are available. If there's a PDF from the manufacturer, whatever, make sure it's available, because I need to be able, as a potential buyer, to make a purchasing decision here, and I cannot pick up the box and flip it around my hands to get that info. And if you don't confirm that this is the right voltage, wattage, or whatever, well, I'm not going to buy it or take that risk. I'm going to go to the next website that did specify this is the correct, part or for what I need. So that's a step one. Fundamentals
it's not even
fully covered.
Yeah. So we're not even talking about SEO here. We're talking about the fundamentals on the website, making sure that the customer is getting the information they need to make a buying decision.
And that does tie into SEO, because you're adding more keywords to your page, and Google sees that as a higher quality page that is not content 10, that has depth, has more words, and you have more chance also to pick up the keyword that the person is searching for by having those complete pages. So it is very basic, but let's make sure you get your basic first in place, your foundation right, and then you can go more fancy.
It's
after.
basic for you because you do this for a living. It's not basic for those that are, bootstrapping and trying to figure this out.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of groundwork. Get some intern, outsource it. If the manufacturer is nice, they can give you a lot of more complete data sheets, but most manufacturers are kind of lacking in that regard. And this is if you're a retailer, you're reselling somebody else's product. If it's your own brand, then you have no choice to produce all that stuff yourself. And this is also a good distinction between being a brand owner, so your own product, your own brand, you get it manufactured somewhere, versus being a retailer. Let's say if you're, again, Shopify versus Magento. On Shopify, pretty much all buying experience will be the same, and checkout cannot be customized and stuff like that. So if you're a retailer and you're selling the same stuff as everybody else, it can be a nice way to differentiate yourself, to have a different purchasing experience, than to not be on Shopify for that specific aspect. If it's your own brand, there's less impact.
Right. So the number one mistake is people don't give enough, information about the product and the process and everything that the buyer needs to make a good buying decision.
Both to Google and to the buyer.
To Google and the buyer, because Google will help with SEO. Okay. Number 3 mistakes that they make. What can they avoid?
Right. Let's say you probably want to go deeper in terms of if you're with Magento, in terms of monitoring the performance of the site. With Shopify, it's typically not a problem. With Magento, you'll want to go deeper. Then the Magento partner can help with this to be sure
performance
that everybody
means speed. Is that what that means?
Mostly speed, yes. That like every user, we want to track them. Everybody on the site, not like when I go on the site, I had a good experience, and then you go on the site, well, the page not nicely loading or whatever. So we want to monitor every person's experience. There are tools for that. They're added on the site so that everybody has a great experience, and you can track individual user. That specific guy had a super long loading time. Well, okay, what happened there? Was it perhaps on his computer the problem? It's just one guy, sure. But if you can see that sometimes there are people not having a great experience there, that's another thing to track, and that is not often done. Another one would be to do.
Let me ask on that one. Is that because of user experience, and then they're leaving the site quickly, and it's also being measured by Google, that their time on site is shortened, that it loads slower, so you're being penalized in terms of rankings?
Yeah, you're right. That will not help. But I'm thinking often even more in fundamental, just business ways that, well, you just lost a potential buyer. That's even more important to me than Google.
Okay. So this is fascinating. So I just want to just point out that number 1 and number 2 are not complex. It's make sure you're doing the right thing for the customer, giving them what they need and making sure their experience is right. It takes time and effort and work, but it's not.
Exactly.
It's not like some mystery of the universe where you have to, become an astrophysicist to figure it out. It's common sense.
It's common sense and the time and budget to make it happen, basically, to have a great customer experience.
Right.
Lots of testing, debugging, and then you have a good platform to show. And there's a few more things that are very often skipped that are not necessarily that advanced. We're starting to be in advanced territory, but it's called A/B testing, or sometimes called multi-version testing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is something that as soon as you have enough traffic, you have a few thousand visitors per month, you should do. So and the bigger the ad spends that you have, the more you should do this. And it's unbelievable the difference that you can have on this. You take, let's say, a $10 million a year business, they're in top line sales, and we did some A/B testing for them. There was just an annoying pop-up. People didn't like that pop-up, but it offered a promotion code if you sign up with it. So you give your email, you receive a discount code. If you remove that pop-up, you lose $1 million a year in sales. It's just one change.
That's amazing. I gotta tell you, the split testing, the A/B split testing, it seems like whatever, Guillaume, I know my customer, I know what they want, and I'm, smarter than they are. Let me just do what, the best offer. A lot of people do that. I did it. I'm guilty. I said, I got this. I was dead wrong every single time, to the point where finally I'm like, we will never, ever launch another campaign without split testing. Every time that we did one, back when I had my last e-commerce business, now obviously I don't at Quiet Light, but I would do I would just put the new promotion out there, and because I'm so smart and I'm so good and I know what my customer wants, that I would just do that. Finally, my developer was smarter than me, like you are, and said, dude, you got to do some split testing. You've got enough visitors. Let's split test this. And I'm like, all right, fine, we'll do it that way, but this one's going to win. Every single time. We did like 4 or 5 of them in a row. And I'm like, this one. Every time I was wrong. Every time the other one crushed it. And then when you do the math, like you just said, a pop-up that may annoy you, but adds $1 million in revenue, you got to look at those things, these tiny little things. So 1% change on 10 million in revenue, that's 100,000. Tiny little changes can make a huge difference. And I fully endorse the split testing. Back in the day, it was difficult though. I needed the developer to do that. And I assume in Magento, it's not a plugin, it's a bit more complicated. Is that right?
Well, it depends what you want to split test. If you want to split test some front end display changes, bigger add to cart button, a different color, that kind of stuff, you have Google Optimize and a few other tools that allows you to do this, because it's just front end display that you're testing which one performs better if it affects users' behavior, like add to cart and checkout. If you're wanting to test something more complex, like different price points, then that requires database work, and that's more complex to put in place.
Gotcha. Guillaume, you have a podcast. You had me as a guest on the podcast, which is an indication that you are here to help first and foremost, which I love. I think it's beneficial. You're talking about what you do every day on the podcast so people can tune in and listen. What is the name of the podcast for the listening audience?
It's E-commerce Wizards. You can find it pretty much everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on MageMontreal.com/podcast.
And what do you talk about on E-commerce Wizards?
Well, I do interviews of business leaders and, e-commerce and business, exactly, and try to help merchants to grow their e-commerce store. That's the whole goal of it, because I build websites. I'm there to some degree to do consulting and to help the entrepreneur to grow the site, but we're not a marketing agency, and we're trying to help those merchants to grow their site as much as possible and grow their business and be successful online.
Okay. How do people reach out to you? What's the best approach? Is it Mage, M-A-G-E, Montreal.com, or should they hit you up on LinkedIn, or how should they find you?
Yeah, MageMontreal.com. That's perfect. That's the best way to reach me. I can be found on LinkedIn as well. Guillaume Le Tual. You probably need it spelled out from the description of the podcast. And that would be it.
We will put his LinkedIn profile in the show links, along with links to the website and the podcast. Definitely listen to the podcast, folks. It's a great start. Visit the website, MageMontreal.com. You'll have an opportunity to see all the different things that he does and the different types of clients, and open your mind to getting off of Shopify and moving on to something that's going to allow you to be in that, upper north of $1 million revenue range, certainly up to 25 million and beyond for sure. When you get to that level, Shopify, you're definitely going to outgrow it, bottom line. Guillaume, thanks again. Appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your wisdom and experience. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Okay, folks, that's another episode of the Quiet Life Podcast. Thanks for joining. Help us out with hitting that like, subscribe button wherever you listen. The more subscribers we have, the higher up in the rankings we're going to go. The more people we can reach, the more people we can help. So help us by hitting like or subscribe. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.